Welcome to my comprehensive guide to getting into law school. So, for those who don't know me, my name is Julian. I went to undergrad at Berkeley. I graduated 1 year early and I went straight through to NYU Law. I applied to transfer after my 1L year because I performed well and I got into Harvard and Stanford. I matriculated to Harvard, graduated at 24, worked in corporate law for a couple years, and now I am doing a bunch of different stuff, including focusing and advocating for mental health. But that's not why we're here today. We're here today because you want to get into law school, and I'm here to give you the game plan and the step-by-step analysis of each component of that process to get you into the best law school possible. This video, it does not matter if you're in high school, if you're a parent, if you're in college, if you're post-grad. This is the video for you if you want to know all of the various elements and how to get in. So let's take a step back. To get into law school, period, your GPA from undergrad and your LSAT are going to be the most important things, and you're going to hear me say that a lot during this video. But let's zoom out. So let's say we're in high school, we want to be a lawyer. Where do we start, Julian? Well, let's get you into college. Okay, the first step is to get you into an undergrad because law school requires an undergraduate degree, right? Now, I get the question a lot, does it matter where I go to undergrad? The short answer is that it doesn't matter a ton, but the better school you go to will marginally help your application, right? If I went to Cal State Fullerton compared to someone who went to undergraduate at Harvard and we had the same stats, I think the admissions offices are probably going to weigh the person who went to Harvard more and higher than the person who went to Fullerton. I don't think you should necessarily base where you go to undergrad on this fact, but it's just something to keep in mind. Okay, so then we get into college. Great, Julian, I'm here now. What should I major in? Get this question a lot too. The answer here is that, remember, the goal here for law school is to get the best GPA that you can, right? So the first thing I would say is don't chase a major where you think your GPA is going to be in question, in doubt, or potentially low, right? If you're doing engineering, if you're doing something in the hard sciences, it's going to be hard to keep up a really good GPA, and it will hurt your admissions chances. So if you know you're set on law school, pick a major that you think that you can do well in that also is kind of interesting to you. For myself, I did economics because I'm very risk averse, and I felt if I didn't get into law school, I wanted to have a degree that maybe I could get a job with, and so economics was perfect for me. But you don't have to do economics. You could do polyeconomics. You could do political science. You could do English. You could do Asian American studies. You know the world is your oyster. But just keep in mind the goal here, which is to maximize your GPA, right? The major itself doesn't matter a ton. While we're on the subject of majors, I hear people talk about double majors. What about if I get a minor? The short answer is it doesn't really matter. If you get a double major, if you get a minor, that's great. But law schools are not going to give you a gold star if you do a double major, in my opinion. The most important thing they're going to be looking at is your GPA. I only did economics, right? I didn't do a major or a minor, and I do not think that it hurt my chances. So we get to college. Let's say it's our first semester. We've decided on poli-sci early. That's great. Okay, we're ready to roll. What should we do over our summers, right? What should we do for extracurriculars? Because this is the other component besides the LSAT that you're going to hear me harp on is extracurricular activities. And this is not just limited to internships over the summer, but this could be clubs, this could be leadership roles, it could be research positions with professors. I always say that a very slept-on opportunity for undergraduate students is doing research with professors in political science or economics, because typically people are not looking at those sorts of professors for research positions. They're kind of like unpopular, but they're really good for your resume. So check those out. Most undergrad institutions have programs where you basically apply and then you get slotted into some sort of professorial research track where you work directly with the faculty. Now, on the internships themselves, I think the most important thing to keep in mind here, there's no right or wrong internship, okay? Like, if you intern at a congresswoman's office for free, that's great. If you get a law firm internship, that's great. The most important thing you just have to keep your mind on here is you need to spend your time wisely, right? Because law school is going to look at your application. They're going to say, okay, Julian, you were an undergrad and that's fine, but what did you do over your summers? It looks like you just kind of like hung out and like had fun. And that's cool, right? But if you compare it to Julian number 2 over here that has internships and spent their time doing all these other things, we just kind of like Julian 2 number, more because they spent their time doing other interesting things. And so you shouldn't count yourself out if you don't get anything over the summers. Like, don't fret and don't stress over it. But if you can, try to apply and try to do interesting things with your time, be it in business, in tech, in policy, in government, in education, it doesn't matter what you're doing. It just matters that you're doing something. The more competitive the internship, the better it's going to look in your resume, right? That's the reality. If you have an internship at Google, that's going to look really good to law schools compared to if I have an unpaid internship with some startup that nobody knows, right? That's unfortunately the reality. So keep in mind that brand does matter. But aside from those standard sort of extracurriculars, internships, research positions, part-time jobs, I think are also good. Really don't fret it, right? Just try to make sure you're using your time wisely and also make sure you have fun, right? Like law schools, I had so many friends who didn't do anything during their undergrad years and then took time off and just traveled for 3 years and then they still got in, and you compare them to people like me who just grinded and grinded and grinded and like it's not a surefire thing either way if you do all this work that you're going to get in, and it's also not a surefire thing that if you don't do all of these things you're not going to get in. So don't stress out about it. Make sure you have some fun too, doing some things in your time in undergrad and post undergrad that you enjoy and you think is fun. Okay, so you know what you need to do now. You need to get the best grades. You need to do extracurriculars. Awesome. That's going to be like 80 to 90% of your time. But here's the big fish, okay? And you probably know what's coming. The LSAT. Okay, and let me pause here and I'll say, I know some law schools are allowing people to take the GRE rather than the LSAT. My personal advice, take the LSAT. Because law schools, whether they're going to tell you this or not, they're going to respect the LSAT more than they're going to respect the GRE because the LSAT's the more traditional exam. So even schools like Harvard who say, oh, you don't have to take the LSAT to apply, you should take the LSAT, right? Don't count on these schools. Don't take their word for it. They're going to respect the LSAT more. How long should you study? How do you study all of these things? The simple answer and the short version here is you should study for the LSAT about 6 months. You should begin about 6 months before you want to take it. I would say anywhere from 10 to 25 hours a week is a good metric and benchmark to kind of keep yourself on track. How do you study? There are a lot of resources on this. I'm not going to get into it in this specific video, but I'll just say off the top of my head, 7 Sage, Power Score Bibles, but most importantly, you got to take these practice tests. The Law School Admissions Committee has released, I think, like 80 to 100 of the old exams. You should buy them on Amazon. They're like $12 a book. Take as many of them as you can, all right? And don't count yourself out if your score isn't that high. When I started, I think I had around a 145 practice score when I first began. And after my 30 to 40th practice exam, yes, I took 30 to 40 practice exams. I actually took all of them at the time, so I took like all 80 total. But what I'm saying is after I took the first 30 or 40, that's when I felt my score really started getting consistent and climbing in the high 160s and then eventually the 170s. So the exam is absolutely one that you can game and that you can practice, but you need to put in the work, and there's really no substitute for it. People ask about these classes, Test Masters, Kaplan, those types of things. I took Test Masters. Honestly, I thought it was a waste of money. My honest take. It was $1,500, and basically it's good to keep you on track. So if you have trouble keeping yourself on track and self-studying, then I think it might be a good idea to take one of those courses. But otherwise, you don't need them, and they're really just going to give you the same thing that these practice books are going to give you, except with an in-person instructor. They might be on Zoom now, right? And that's just not worth the money, in my opinion. Also, keep in mind, you should try to take the LSAT before the fall semester that you apply, or fall season, I should say, that you apply to law school. So the early bird gets the worm for applications, and we'll talk about that more later, but the short version is try to take the LSAT at least by September if you're planning on applying that cycle. That way you get your score back in October, and you can apply by late October, early November. Try not to take the December or the February exam. I think they offer it more than 4 times now. But you get my point, right? Apply early and plan the LSAT accordingly. Now, if you want to do the GRE, that's great. Honestly, I don't have advice specifically on the GRE because I did not take it, but I think it's probably more the same. I have friends who took it and did very well, and it's just practice, practice, practice from what I've seen. So be that what it may. But again, my advice personally is take the LSAT. Don't rely on the GRE. Okay, so we got our grades, we got our extracurriculars, we got our LSAT. What else is there? Here's one thing that is smaller in the application process, but still kind of important. Letters of recommendation, right? A lot of people don't strategize about these, and they kind of just go through college or their career, and then at the very end, they're like, oh, I want to go to law school now. Hey, professor that I met twice, can you write me a letter? What I suggest is go to professor's office and strategize in your head, right? Okay, this professor is someone I want to get a letter from eventually. I'm going to make more of an effort for this semester that I have this class with him or her or they or she, as it were, and I'm going to ask them questions I'm going to pick their brain about their career. I'm going to tell them about myself, and I'm going to build a personal relationship with this professor. The more you can build that relationship, the better the letter of recommendation is going to be for you. And that's the goal here, is for the letter to be quality, right? Not quantity, obviously. And also not from someone who's just famous. Law schools don't care. They specifically told me when I applied, we'd rather have a letter of recommendation from someone who knows you well and can speak to your qualifications and who you are as a person than someone who is just famous who's giving you a letter for the sake of giving you a letter, right? So keep that in mind as well. But you need generally 2 to 4 letters of recommendations, to my knowledge. I applied with 2, and I felt it was fine. I don't think this should be something that anybody stresses out over, to be clear. I think you should meet people, and in your career, if you're doing that, or if you're applying straight out from undergrad, you should have professors or GSIs. GSIs are graduate student instructors, TAs, essentially master's students or PhD students, that you know like you. And you should have those people write the letters for you. Not much else to say there. Just make sure that they get it in on time, and tell them as early as you can, if you're sure that you're applying to law school, that you want them to write the letter so that they have as much time as they can to write and draft it for you. Now, we got the letters, we got the LSAT, we got the GPA, we got the extracurriculars. We're almost ready to apply. Like, what are we doing here now, right? The law school application process is very simple, right? Of all grad schools, I think law school is one of the best. Only a couple of schools do interviews, so most schools do not. I think Harvard does an interview, and it's very short, like 30-minute to an hour interview, I believe. But most law schools don't even do interviews. And so your application basically consists of your transcript, letters of recommendation, LSAT score, extracurriculars resume, right? And your personal statement. And so the personal statement is going to be the thing that I'm going to harp on now, because that's really the only other element to get into law school that you need to focus on. And there's a lot that can be said about personal statements. I have a guide that I wrote specifically to help people write the best personal statement possible, and that'll be in my profile or my beacon, so check that out if you're interested. But the short version is you want to tell a story, right? Personal statements are not restatements of your resume. They're stories about who you are as a person and why who you are as a person is a good fit for the program and the career that you seek. And so we're talking law, right? So the idea should be, I have a background in this, and I did this experience, and that has put me up and set me up perfectly for a career in law because X, Y, Z, right? Get started on it early. Don't procrastinate on it. If you know you're going to apply in November, get it done in late September. Get it done in October. You want to have time to have friends review it, family review it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And once you have that, and I'll say as a disclaimer, it's been a while. Law school admissions may have changed, but this is the meat and potatoes. I'll say that much. If there's other application requirements, let me know in the comments and I can address them. But this is, for the most part, I think 80 to 90% of the process. You got to apply early. And I don't mean early as in apply early to a specific school. Don't do that. Don't sell yourself short. You should apply early in the cycle, because law school's admissions are rolling, right? There's no one date that all admissions come out. Rolling admissions means when you apply to every single school will get back to you whenever they feel like. So the earlier you apply, the more spots are open in the school. And the more spots are open in the school, the higher your chances are of getting in. And that's just a fact. The earlier bird gets the worm in law school admissions. So make sure you apply earlier in the cycle. Don't wait until spring. I mean, if you can control it. If you can't control it and you apply in spring, that's okay. That's okay, right? It's not going to count you out, but again, we're planning here, we're strategizing, right? And so the game here is to apply early, as early as you can. That's probably it. If you have all of those elements lined up, make sure to have fun along the way. Make sure to remember that law school admissions, let me touch on this real quick. If you have a poor undergrad GPA, do not count yourself out. If you have a poor LSAT, do not count yourself out. Okay, law schools look at you as a holistic applicant. Don't ever think, I don't have this qualification or this qualification. Apply. Don't ever second guess yourself, all right? Learn from my mistakes in that way. I applied early to NYU and I got in, and that was great. I was very happy, but I always felt I sold myself short. And I applied later to transfer and I was accepted, and it worked out in the end, but it didn't have to be in the path that I specifically took. Taking the LSAT multiple times, I want to touch on that really quickly. Go for it. Don't worry about if your score low and then you want to take it again. Take it multiple times if you need to. right? If you score really well and you want to do like perfect next time, you get a 178 and you're like, I want a 180 next time, don't do that. Because if you mess up, it's not going to look good, right? But other than that, for the most part, don't count yourself out. Have fun with it. You know, learn from other people out there in the world. Talk to lawyers and make sure it's really what you want for you, or at least the JD, right? For me, I knew for a long time I didn't want to be a practicing lawyer, but I still wanted the JD. And so talk to people in the field and really make sure it's for you, because law school is a lot of debt, it's a lot of time. Honestly, it's a lot of stress. It's a big commitment. And I think you should be mindful when you make that sort of decision. But I hope this was helpful. And like and subscribe. This is like my first YouTube video, so I'm not sure. But I appreciate you guys, and let me know how else I can help, okay? Thank you. Much love.